we're going to get more advanced now into some more deeper topics, subject-specific stuff. We're going to start with WebGL. So what this is a framework or a library for giving developers the way of creating 3D content for their applications. And as Tim mentioned in the keynote this morning, OpenGL and GL in general is how majority of the native side or the Cascades experience is implemented. So it provides really rich looking and functioning experiences and does some really cool stuff. Has anyone worked with OpenGL before? Oh yeah, right on, that's cool. So WebGL is really important just to highlight the fact that it's fully hardware accelerated, starting with Playbook 2.0, and that includes BlackBerry 10 as well going forward. So if you had content running on Playbook 1.7, you would immediately have seen it, boost in performance as you upgraded to 2.0. It's actually not a plugin. This is, built into the web engine itself. So it's going to work for the same content running in the browser as it will the same content running in a WebWorks app. Or even if you built like a native hybrid app with a web view and you had WebGL content running in there, it would work because it's integrated into the web platform. Really important other thing to recognize for people who are considering it, using it, there's no mobile profile. There's no mobile version of WebGL that has a limited set of APIs. It's really the same language across desktop and mobiles. And we're really the first platform, like I said earlier, to offer it open to developers to use. And with that comes some really interesting learning experiences. And those are, you got to be really responsible with the type of content that you're building. You can't depend on heavy, really strong and powerful CPU and RAM and memory like you get on the desktop world. On a mobile profile, on a device, those resources are limited. And so once you build a WebGL app that depends on these resources, you're really going to notice it. And it is a matter of the content running. So as mentioned, I showed you earlier, Tunnel Tilt. This is out in App World today, built as a learning resource simply for showing developers how easy it is to bring any other WebGL content over to BlackBerry. There is a lot of really cool content out there, specifically I believe it's called Webgl Experiments, part of the Chrome Experiments collection. Really neat samples that you can test out and see how it looks in most latest versions of some desktop browsers like Chrome Beta and Firefox and so on. They enable WebGL. There's some really exciting stuff. I'm seeing a lot of games being used, being created with WebGL, which kind of makes sense. They depend on really rich graphics and cool effects and performance and so on. WebGL makes that a bit easier to do than CSS3 or the Canvas or so on. With Tunnel Tilt, the developer who made it started with the HTML5 accelerometer API and actually discovered some limitations that he wanted to extend the capabilities of that beyond what the standard API provided. So he actually created an extension, an accelerometer extension. So if you were to look at the code for Tunnel Tilt in GitHub, you'd see an extension folder with accelerometer, and there's also a custom sound API because the developer wasn't happy with the current state of the HTML5 audio API. So he extended it and built beyond it. So just kind of showing some examples of how extensions can help you complete your application. You don't have to wait for the community to define standards for you. Right, so 3JS, this is something that I wanted to actually show some examples of on the device. 3JS is a library created by Ricardo Carbello, I think that's the name. Sorry, Ricardo, if I mispronounced it. You might know him as Mr. Doob, if you've ever seen any of the Chrome experiments. He's usually listed in the top 10, at least 9 of the top 10 Chrome experiments. This guy is passionate about 3D graphics. And so he's created this JavaScript library for allowing developers to make it easy for them to build 3D graphic content into their apps. And how it's done is it implements either a canvas, HTML5 canvas, or it uses WebGL or even SVG under the covers, but it provides a common interface for your application to use and makes it a bit easier to use WebGL. Just wanted to go through a quick experiment, an exercise to show why you might want to consider using 3GL or a library for writing your own WebGL application. WebGL itself is very raw, like it's very low level, right? You can do really access very primitive functionality, very low level functionality in a WebGL application. And that can be overwhelming, especially for a new developer. I mean, the learning curve just for understanding the language is probably, it might be pretty great. So libraries take that complexity out of the equation and make it easier for you to get started and going. So I just want to show a comparison of drawing a square, that's it, in just plain old WebGL compared to 3JS. And so the requirements for that are this. So you create your drawing surface, you set up the scene and the camera and the actual drawing area, and then you create your objects and draw it. Kind of basic steps. So going through it, there's 6 steps. So start by creating a canvas. So far, so good. With raw WebGL, you actually have to create a canvas element. That's going to be where you're going to be drawing your content onto. With 3JS, you just include a script to the library, and it does it for you. Then we continue. So getting the context, getting the drawing area. We start by providing reference to the actual canvas object, and then we get the context to the WebGL property of that. Whereas in 3JS, we just go new scene. It makes sense, right? Like, can you explain this to your grandma? Would she understand what that is? Maybe new scene. He's like, yeah, I get it. It makes sense, right? It's behavior driven. It just makes sense to me. And as you can see, this is getting out of control, right, as we get more and more into this exercise, right? So just setting up the drawing pieces. You have vertex shaders, fragment shaders, this and that, positions, and so on. It's just more logical using this library because he's encapsulated a lot of this in these methods and properties that are easier to understand and use. Create a new camera, add it to the scene. And there we go. So buffering. Look at this. The first time I saw this, it's like you have to actually create a square by drawing like vertices. It's like, oh my goodness, can you imagine typing all that out for every time you want? Why not just go new cube? Let's call it, apply some materials and meshes to it and then add it to the scene. Right? So that's cool that it makes it easier to do. What's even cooler is that if you were willing and eager to do it, you have complete control over like this low-level primitive data in the WebGL library. Which is pretty neat. We're up to 24 lines of code now just for drawing a square using raw WebGL. So I'm just going to skip over this because this is crazy. And finally, we have the result, which is just a square. So I just wanted to say new square. It's kind of crazy that it can be so complicated to do so. But you got to just recognize the power of the library that you're working with. It's quite amazing. And then, of course, 3JS makes this very easy to do. Let me just show a demo of it right now. Can I have the HTML, please? So on GitHub, you can go there to grab the source for the 3JS library. And he also has a samples folder there that just has a number of HTML pages, linked to JavaScript libraries. And you can use that to see how some of these features work. Right now I'm running... what have I got? I've got an internal build, I think, 2.1, which is going to be coming out hopefully soon. I'm just going to use it to show off some of these examples. So let's see, what is this one? It's kind of hard to see in the top corner. There's the frame per second panel. So what we've noticed is that some of these demos work really good, and some of them work really bad. And there's a number of reasons for that experience. In some cases, it could be bugs in our platform. So the way we've implemented WebGL is conflicting with this library. In some cases, it's actually the 3JS library that's buggy. And in other cases, it's video drivers. So something completely outside of the control of both the library creators and the developers. Let me see if I can show a different demo here. Geometry, materials. Right. So I wish there was a count for how many objects are in the scene. I would guess it's maybe 100. They're all moving pretty fluidly. There's a little bit of choppiness there. But you notice the reflection in these objects. And I'm not like, here, you can see this isn't smoke and mirrors. This is actually running from a live device, right? This is done with Three.js. He's made it easy to create scenes like this and frames. This is just one of the examples. Let's see, materials, cars. Yeah. So not bad. Nice and smooth. Cool reflections and shading and lighting effects. Very powerful framework, especially if you're doing like rich media for games or media in general. It's pretty cool. So if you want, you're welcome to, at break time, if you want to come up and play around with some of these demos, you're welcome to. Laptop, please. So a couple other examples of work that the community is doing, beyond just like the Three.js library. There's a number of frameworks and libraries out there for you to use. J3D is really an experiment that was actually created by this fellow named Bartek at a Webgl developer event. I think it was in Poland, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. Put together this thing as a proof of concept for his presentation, and it turned into this really powerful library that I think he's continuing with building and doing so on the open source. So it's pretty cool. It's actively being contributed on GitHub, and it's even getting into some advanced subjects like working with Unity, which is pretty neat. Anyone work with Maya before? Or built Maya scenes? Yeah, a couple people. So Inca 3D is a solution to help you export those scenes into a WebGL content, and then you can take that content and run it on Playbook or BlackBerry 10 Dev Alpha if you'd like. Makes it really easy to manipulate those models with JavaScript, right? Because as you noticed before, WebGL is available through JavaScript. Everything is written in JavaScript, so you can take this content and transform it and enhance it further into something really cool and powerful on BlackBerry in that regard. Webscape, that's that sample that I showed earlier with the two joysticks, and you run around in this open terrain scene. This is something created by my colleague Eric for the purposes of demoing at FITC in Toronto. That's another, used to be a Flash event, now it's evolved into more of a web developer event. This is a learning resource that's published on GitHub. You can download it today for free if you want and see how that sample was put together. I just want to go through a few examples of some of the features that are built into that, such as terrain, how the skybox was done, coloring and texturing, and even the joysticks. So the landscape, when Eric started this, he didn't know anything about WebGL, hadn't touched it, hadn't even considered it, and was able to put that sample together in about a week of time. And what he discovered was that the community as a whole has created and published so many learning resources on this subject that it's amazing. There's so much support out there in terms of tutorials and walkthroughs, even libraries and code that you can just pull and plug into your application. And I think Webscape has a lot of third-party content just built into it that's open and free to use. Some of the theory behind it includes, how do you generate this random landscape? And there was a number of techniques that he discovered were available to use. And the one that he took into account, the two that he took into account was this, either the diamond square fractal algorithm, where you have a surface area and you split it up into points and you raise and lower each of those and blend the two elevations, or the fault algorithm, where you take a surface area and you randomly slice it in half, and then you change the elevation of one piece, and then you take the other piece and you slice it in half and you change that. And so you have this, the result is you have this really smooth surface that has a different elevation. So he's able to create these peaks and valleys, and they look very close to valleys and mountains, which is pretty neat. The skybox. So the neat thing is that in that sample, it looks like there's this infinite perspective where you're looking out into the sky and there's clouds, and it looks like it goes off into the horizon. It's actually just a surface that's maybe a foot in front of your face in reality, with the sky painted on it, and it's called a skybox. And it's just a technique for creating the illusion of this infinite region inside your application. One interesting discovery is that there is actually a limitation. Once he got beyond a 1024 by 1024 texture, so the cloud image that he used to apply to this skybox surface, we ran into performance issues, and we didn't really fully understand what it was at the time, and it turned out to be related to the driver. So the driver just couldn't perform beyond that point. So we used that information to channel feedback back to our our browser development team, and now they have that information and they're working on providing a better experience going forward in the future. Yeah, colors and textures. This completely came from a third-party solution. So, went out and found a solution out there on the web and used it simply just to plug it into his app. You don't have to reinvent the wheel with WebGL. A lot of developers have done a lot of work for you, which is pretty cool. Right? So once this was in place, we now had, textured surface. We had peaks and valleys. We had this infinite skyboxed powered sky perspective, and now we actually have actual colors and shadows that are built onto it. And yeah, how do you do input control? How do you make the camera actually move to make it look like you're walking around? Wouldn't it be great if someone developed a virtual joystick.js library? Well, they did. So, if you ever get stuck in your development, you're like, oh man, do I have to build this? The answer sometimes is no. Just do a quick check to see if someone else has already gone through that pain for you, and then go with it from there. Okay, I think that's it for WebGL. It was pretty crazy content. I was pleased to see a number of people are already working with OpenGL. If anyone's more interested in getting deeper into WebGL and BlackBerry, please let me know, because this is a very interesting area of topic that I'd like to track and promote. So once you have something built that's created that's really cool, let me know, and we'll make a lot of noise about it, because we want other developers to hear about it as well. Okay, Chad, you want to join me up in here and we'll talk about Remote Web Inspector? Thanks, man. Oh. No, that's right. Here, you do that, and I'll set something up.
See if we have any connectivity in here. Basically, talk about Remote Web Inspector, but definitely my favorite tool for developing apps. Before I came to RIM, I was a developer. I used it pretty much constantly. So yeah, basically, hang on here. Okay, so what is Remote Web Inspector? Basically allows you to debug your web content running on a live device, which is pretty crucial. As good as the simulators can be, and Ripple, and all the different options out there, in the end you always need to have that testing on a live device, and they don't always perform as you would expect. So you may come up with a bug here or there, and Remote Web Inspector really helps you target down on what's going on and help you troubleshoot and optimize it greatly. It's available for BlackBerry OS 7, Playbook, BB10, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So is that going to
Yeah, why don't we
cooperate
switch to the live device and see if we can get this going.
Yep.
Back to the HTML, if you would, please. So we're going to show Web Inspector in the browser.
Yeah, so we'll just go over real quick how to show you how to set up the device on the Playbook to support it. You need to firstly be in development mode, which we already are, but if you're not already, go to Security, Development Mode, turn it on, password. So pretty straightforward so far.
And that props up this little person icon.
Yep, you'll be able to see, it'll confirm development mode's on. It'll tell your IP address, as well as the kind of internal address of the device if you're plugged in with USB.
All right.
So next we'll got the browser loaded up here. We want to go into load up the web page. In this case, we're going to debug a live web page here. So we'll need to go in the settings, of course. Make sure that under security that Web Inspector is enabled, which, there we go. So there you go. It prompts us with, Web Inspector has been enabled, and you'll notice the IP address it'll tell you to go to access that. So you just type that in the address bar in your browser, and notice the port is the elite port, 1337. Someone had fun programming that in, I guess.
All right, so now we have Web Inspector enabled in the browser.
Yep, so we're enabled. We're on Google there. Do you want to switch back to the...
Yes.
So if we could switch to the laptop, please. So there. So we've got our address in the address bar. We've got the port.
Yeah.
Got her in there.
So this is the IP address of the USB cable that my device is plugged into. So you can actually connect over Wi-Fi. So if both laptop and device are connected to the same Wi-Fi spot, they can speak to each other. You can do that, or over the IP address.
So there you go. We've basically right now we're logged into the playbook. So click on Google there. And, basically, if this was your application, we'd be starting to debug here. Right away, you're kind of greeted with the Elements panel up top there. And this, as you can see, if you know HTML, it'll look pretty familiar to you. Lists all the elements on your page. So I mean, you can expand them, contract them. What's cool about the Elements panel is you've got all the styles there on the right. So can't really see it in this view, but say you have an image that's not laid out properly on the screen. Rather than deploy it to the device, 10 times to try to fine-tune it, you can actually change the CSS properties. There we go. That's better.
Easier to see.
So yeah, you can change something like a CSS property. See how the text would look, maybe like a point bigger, or maybe this picture will look a bit better, 10 pixels to the left or to the right. Super handy. Really helps it become a rapid development when you can do that kind of stuff for sure.
So instead of rebuilding and resigning and redeploying your app,
exactly,
you can just see how it would look like in real time. So right now I'm actually digging into the Google logo on the website. So that's what these divs are here. You can see as I click on them, you can get access to any of the DOM information about the active element that I have selected here, such as what CSS styles are applied to it and so on.
Right. So I guess might as well, you want to switch over to go to resources there, the next tab, or you keep going through?
Yeah, just one thing, this guy here, I should talk about this guy.
Oh, sorry, event listeners. Yeah, really cool part about this tab here. Have you ever had a button that you're clicking on and it's just not firing? You've created an on-click event and it just doesn't work. You can actually go in on an element, see if that event's actually bound to the button or whatever it may be in your app. So again, real valuable. You don't have to have alerts popping up saying to try to determine if something's set or not. So, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was wondering, do you have access to any of the lower line, like heap information or memory information? Do you have issues with scroll down and
Yeah, there's, I believe, the timeline, and you've also got profiling. You can do CPU profiling too. So, almost there.
Yeah, we'll show a demo of that when we get there. Cool. You know what? I'd like to actually, I'm going to try something. I'm going to put the simulator instead, so that we can see both side by side. Yeah. So if you want to just continue on doing that. Why don't I go back to your presentation so that you can see what you're doing.
So there, I got to play a bit of catch up here now. So yeah, we'll touch over some features here while Adam's doing that, then we'll go back and show kind of a live examples, a nicer way to go through it. So after the second panel, I believe, is it's a resources panel. What this is good for is you can see all your bundled resources in your app. You can see all your images, style sheets, the scripts, everything. Make sure everything's there and loading properly. You can see the cookies, make sure cookies are set. Local storage, you can edit the pairs in the local storage, remove them. Somebody had a question about storing password information and stuff like that in local storage. So this is what I was kind of referring to with Web Inspector. You can really get in there and, just instead of having to, again, deploy it to the device, you can change some variables around and do a little further testing right in the browser.
I'm going to interrupt you. Just let that go.
Get in there?
Hmm?
Okay. So the network panel, this is probably my favorite panel because I've spent a lot of time doing OAuth with Twitter. And has anybody had fun with OAuth yet? So
What do you call it? Fun.
People are laughing already. So as you know, OAuth is lots of fun sometimes, especially the 1.0 standard. So to be able to, in the network panel, first off, start at the top here. What I like to do initially when I make an app in the network panel is just, after I've created my app, I'll load it up. And what I'll do is just check, make sure nothing's coming up red, meaning that it can't find that resource that it's trying to download. So I'll make sure all my scripts are there and make sure everything's up and running. So once I get to that point, so my OAuth example, you're able to actually see the headers, like the numbers and the response back from servers. So you're trying to do something like authorize, like I was to Twitter, you can see that it's a bad request, and you'll know it'll usually have a response with an answer as to why this was a bad request. Just really, really useful for troubleshooting any network connections at all. Of course, you can also see file sizes and anything network related. Really, it's super useful.
Just going to bring up a sample here. My screen resolution, I boosted it up for here.
Had to lower the resolution a bit to get it working here.
Oh, right, the simulator issue. Okay, so we'll do this in a WebWorks app instead. Okay. I'll just describe how you can actually enable it in WebWorks too.
Oh yeah, sorry. When you so to enable Web Inspector in your application, if you're compiling from the command line, you'd be using the -D flag. That will enable it automatically for you. Going back to RPL again, there's actually when you're building and deploying the app, there's actually a checkbox. You can enable Remote Web Inspector, which is a little friendlier than typing it into a console or command prompt. I'll see, Adam, if we can log in there now if the Wi-Fi cooperates.
Mm-hmm. There we go.
Nice. All right, so there we'll see the application Adam loaded, which is that, I'm not too sure what it is. What's an example of a swipe down menu, I think?
Yeah, the swipe down library. So you can respond to one of the WebWorks APIs is capturing the event when you swipe down from the top bezel. So this library makes it easy just to build these menu bars and add buttons to it and so on. But what we're looking at is a WebWorks application. So let's try this side by side. If we go swipe menu.
Yeah, there you go. Got the gist of it. So yeah, as you can see, when he's moving the cursor over the different elements, it's actually highlighting it on the screen. Kind of helps you narrow down. If they're all collapsed, it really just narrows down where you are, where to go from there, pretty much. So it's pretty cool, and that's right on the live app in the simulator. It could be on another phone. It could be on the playbook. Yeah. So
any device, any IP address you can connect to. So one of the cool things at RIM is that we have like a corporate Wi-Fi hotspot. So we've got like 30 different buildings here in Waterloo, but everyone's on the same hotspot, so you can ping each other and so on. So one of the fun things I like to do with my team is when I get the IP address of their playbook is that, and I know they have an app open that's got Web Inspector enabled, is that I can actually connect to it from my own device. And I can do fun things like this. Because it's not only debugging in real time, but, so, wipe menu. That's a completely different library. You can do this, right? Double click. Hi, Chad. Right? So you can mess around with people's minds if you want to do that. But as Chad mentioned, it's really good for making small incremental changes to your application in real time on a live device and seeing how that would look if you had gone through the process of recompiling stuff and doing that.
It's not actually changing your source or anything, but it's more for just a visual tool of how does this look in this.
Mm-hmm. Does this app have any cookies? No, I guess it doesn't. Okay. But if this app was using any sort of local storage API or WebDB, you'd actually see a preview of whatever data the app is storing in memory in this panel. In the network panel, right. For that one, I think I will show you on the live device because it's a really cool panel.
So this is right on the playbook, right?
Yeah, so I loaded up the BlackBerry Jam World Tour site, and I can just reload it from here. And now you can see all this cool information about what's happening.
There you go. So yeah, you'll be able to see, as I said, can you move that? Move the method over there a little bit. Well, it doesn't matter too much.
Here?
There you go. So yeah, you'll see it's saying, it's getting these images, it's getting the different scripts and assets from the application, or website in this case, rather. We'll see the timeline there. It tells you how long, how responsive it is. If you have a slow server somewhere, maybe you're fetching data from an offsite server, you're trying to find a bottleneck, you'll see, hey, this is taking 2 seconds, what's going on here? So just really, really, really handy.
And what I really like about this view is these vertical bars. So the blue bar is when certain page events have happened. So DOM content event fired, that's the blue bar, and the red bar is when the page load event fired. So if you wanted to troubleshoot when you're seeing certain things in your page, you can actually see, it took, in this example, reloading our website took 3.28 seconds to get to the load event when the user actually sees something. Right? So pretty helpful.
All right, so that should be it for network. Scripts. Got our next one here. Have to enable those.
I'll do it in the. In this
I think if you're used to using Chrome, I think it's called it's under sources in Chrome.
Yeah,
so it's the same thing.
It's over here under tools, developer tools. Yeah, it's Web Inspector.
Right.
All right. So we got scripts up.
Yep. So basically, we're looking at our scripts that are included in this case, where are we here? We're still on the web page, I believe, right?
This is back to swipe menu. So
okay.
The web tab.
Back to swipe menu. So these are the scripts that are loaded in the swipe menu application. I don't know if you have any minimized ones in there or not, but...
Yep. So here's the hide menu bar method and the show menu bar method. Right. So we're going to set a breakpoint.
Yep. Okay. So what he's done there, when he's clicked on the side there, he sets a breakpoint. What that lets you do, essentially, is step through piece by piece and go step by step, see what's happening in the application. So previously, someone like me, I've used alerts to kind of hold up my app along the way. Say, is it at this part? Is it at this part now? Stuff like that. It seems really ridiculous now that this is available. That I used to do that for some crazy reason, but
we all did.
Apparently, we all did it.
It's all part of being a web developer, but not anymore. So I just did a swipe down gesture from the app, and you'll see that my breakpoint's been hit in the show menu bar method. And then there's these controls over here.
Yep, it'll let you. You can step over. There you go. So as he's shown there, it's basically just going pretty much line to line throughout the application, and I believe there's a spot on there you could check.
Do you want to look at variables?
Yeah, that's what I was going for.
Okay.
You can actually watch the variables. And
so we'll add a variable for the menu object. This is a reference to the DOM element. You can see it in there. I have a height variable as well.
There you go. Yeah. So there we can pretty much monitor what's happening step-by-step basis by using the breakpoints. So. So again, it all comes down to debugging and troubleshooting. Anything else you're thinking in there, Adam?
No, that's definitely good. I mean, there's, you get your preview panel on the right of where the breakpoints are set. There's scope variables, so not only just global watch expressions, but you can actually see what variables are in the current scope, both local and global and so on. And then some really advanced cool stuff. So if you're using XML HTTP request at all for any AJAX, you can set a breakpoint on cool stuff like whenever you're loading a URL that contains, I don't know, google.com. Like any XHR request to that URL would break, and you'd actually be able to catch it in here. So really, really powerful stuff.
All right, so next I guess we'll kind of get to your question there with the timelines.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if we can show a refresh and grab everything there.
I wonder if that would be better for the live page, which we can probably do. Oh, we have to record. Just a second. We started recording. I'll let this finish reloading first, though. Okay, record. Reload.
So there's your, I guess, somewhat an answer to your question there. We're seeing the time it's taking for everything to start happening in the application and whatnot. We can see our memory.
So it looks like it consumed about 2 megs of memory at this point, and then garbage collection cleaned up a bunch of stuff, and then it kicked off and it started downloading the page back up to its peak.
So it kind of ties into the profiling a little bit. I don't believe this part really touches in the CPU usage, especially, but mostly for, I would say, your responsiveness, watching your memory patterns fluctuate. And I've had some circumstances where I had loops that were just, not an infinite loop, but just kept running over and over like 10, 15 times, and you can really see the memory stack really kind of add up there. And again, just another resource there to help you troubleshoot throughout your application if you're having any slowdowns or anything like that, really.
Yeah, it gets you more detailed information below too, saying like, when it tried to download this logo, send request, here's some additional information. Oh, maybe it's being cut off by the block here, but what it's trying to do. So you can get really granular info about what's happening in your page. Okay.
All right, cool. Any questions so far with any of the Web Inspector stuff? No? All right. And the last one here we've got is the profiling, which I mentioned a moment ago.
Switch back to the WebWorks sample for that.
So yeah, similar to timeline, you want to start recording and then refresh your content.
Yeah. Or actually, it's measuring CPU, so any sort of movement or behavior in your app it's going to be able to capture, where are you, just how much cost that is on your app. So let's actually do some animations, right? Because we all know that animations is really resource heavy. So we'll do a couple of those, then switch back and hit stop.
There you go. Okay. So yeah, there we can see everything that was happening. I can see. Oh,
I clicked the wrong tab. Yep.
There you go. There.
So there's my show menu bar method, hide menu bar. It's actually pretty efficient. It's only consuming 0.02% of the system resources to do that animation method. But what happens if you see 10% there? Maybe that's something you should focus on optimizing. Maybe you're doing some blocking or some really expensive JavaScript calculations there.
Yep. I've had a bit of experience with that as far as, if you notice on the right, it'll show you usually the source of what is generating it, which file it's coming from. I had an issue with one of my applications where we're doing, like I said, a lot of canvas work and pixel data manipulation. And I was actually able to find where it was going wrong because the memory usage would keep getting higher and higher and higher and higher, and I would crash out of the application. So definitely if you're having any, well, it's good to check this in general too, just to make sure that something isn't going wrong. But if you do have something that is going wrong, CPU or memory related, definitely you want to be in the Profiles tab and see what's going on right in the application. Last but not least, we've got our console. Basically, this is a place to go to do a lot of your debugging, really. It's where I spend most of my time. You can type in objects there. I believe you got the window object up there.
Mm-hmm. You can even access so I created a module in the swipe menu library. So here it is.
And there, yeah, we have all the properties of the object. We can really see what's happening, make sure certain values are set. Really,
simulate
Losing
swipe
you there.
event is one of those.
There you go.
So I'm hoping, there we go. So I can actually interact with my application straight from the command line. If anyone's ever used Node.js, it's a very similar experience. You're in a JavaScript runtime doing JavaScript. So it's quite similar.
And again, if you have any errors at runtime, they're going to show up here. Like you've got a type error. I'm not sure what is causing that necessarily, but if you didn't have a try and catch in your application, that may stop a feature from working. You wouldn't have any clue that was even going on, aside from the fact that, hey, this feature isn't working. Let me add 100 alerts throughout and see why it's not working. So
Only alerts.
Yeah, alerts. Usually have a nice little witty message in there to keep myself going through development.
Yeah, right. Cool.
So I think that's pretty much it. You want to show my my pretty print?
Oh, yeah.
I've been calling it pretty in pink all week in rehearsals. It's actually called pretty print. And what it does, if you have, usually best practice, of course, is to minify your JavaScript and whatnot. Keep everything as small and crunched down as possible when you're deploying it to a device. And what the little pretty print feature lets you do is expand that. So if you have to check any minimized JavaScript files, it'll format it nice and pretty for you.
Right. So it's just this down in the status bar, this little icon, and there. So it's taken a huge page of minified resources and added white space and indenting just to make it easier to read.
Yeah, that's actually should have mentioned that's under the scripts panel as well. So
cool.
Just I mean, there's so many features we can't even touch on with Web Inspector. It's just so valuable. Like I said, I don't know how I ever lived without it. It's just pretty embarrassing to admit that, but I will for you.
Fair enough.
Is there any? Kind of lost track where we are here.
Yeah, I think we're almost done.
I think that was about it. So, does anybody have any questions about Remote Web Inspector at all, or?
Was that new to anyone, or is everyone aware that you can do that on BlackBerry? It's pretty cool, huh? Yeah, usually the crowd goes quiet whenever we talk about Remote Web Inspector because it's really a new. Well, it's becoming more building awareness of the fact that you can really do this, and immediately I hope you can recognize just how much time you can save. Like you don't have to struggle through debugging or testing anymore. It's just open up a Web Inspector, and most of the time it'll tell you what the problem is and even give you the line number and in some cases provide a solution. Cool.
Oh, I guess we didn't touch. There's a settings for Web Inspector as well. Forgot to go over.
Oh yeah.
Which is pretty cool. You can actually override the user agent, so you can see how will this look in Firefox, how will this look on different browsers. So again, really handy if you really want to get really fine-tuning something like that, and even right down to just changing just the visual look of it for the way it outputs color codes if you want to use the hex code or whichever. So, but yeah, definitely lots of resources out there for more information for Web Inspector.